You might already recognize his face. But if you don't already know, this is Margaret Sanger, a key advocate in the movement for women's rights. Born in September 14, 1879 in Corning, New York, Sanger was the sixth of 11 children. She trained and worked as a nurse where she saw the lack of contraceptive access for women. And at the time, the Comstock Act of 1873 made it illegal to distribute obscene materials including contraceptive information and devices. Yet, Sanger was determined to make a change. So, in 1916, Margaret Sanger established the first birth control clinic in Brooklyn, New York, in an effort to provide women with contraception. The clinic emphasized the importance of women's right to bodily autonomy and access to contraceptives, as well as the responsibility of the government to ensure reproductive health care. Her advocacy led to the 1936 court ruling allowing physicians to prescribe contraceptives, the weakening impact of the Comstock Act, and the founding of Planned Parenthood, highlighting lasting government policies and advancing women's autonomy. This is Margaret Sanger, the fight for women's rights. Growing up, Sanger witnessed her mother have 18 children, 7 of whom died young. Her mother passed away from tuberculosis at 50 years old, and Sanger believed the numerous pregnancies harmed her health and contributed to her early death. At the funeral, she blamed her father, saying, "You caused this. Mother's dead from having too many children." As a nurse, Sanger saw the dangers of secret abortions, high fertility rates, and the harsh reality of poverty. She realized that every woman should have the freedom to prevent unwanted pregnancies. Shocked by the lack of basic sex knowledge, she left nursing in 1912 to focus on birth control and sex education, writing, "What every girl should know to educate young women about their bodies, sexualities, and reproductive health." Sanger's personal experiences with her mother's struggles, the countless women resorting to secret abortions, and the lack of health education made her realize the importance of access to reproductive rights. She understood it was not just necessary, but a responsibility to ensure this right. On October 16, 1916, Margaret Sanger opened up the first birth control clinic alongside her sister Ethel Byrne, a registered nurse, and Fania Mindell, a social worker, in Brooklyn, New York. It was named Brownsville Clinic. She hoped to provide women with contraceptive information. She challenged the Comstock Act that restricted her from these rights. On the opening day, 100 women showed up at the door, and after a few days, there were at least 400 women who came in looking for support. The clinic was a safe space for women to gain information about contraceptives and how to perform safe sexual intercourse, as it is their right to autonomy. On October 26, 1916, Sanger, Byrne, and Mindell were raided by multiple officers because of the amount of violations against the Comstock Act, and the officers searched the Brownsville clinic. Despite this, Sanger didn't have any incriminating documents. This shows Sanger's dedication and effort towards providing women with the tools and knowledge surrounding reproductive health, even if it was against the law. The establishment of the Brownsville clinic was a significant moment in the fight for women's reproductive rights.
One of the most significant short-term effects of Sanger's work was the 1936 court ruling in the United States v. 1 package of Japanese pessaries. This case was significant for advancing the medical need for contraceptives. For example, a package of contraceptives sent to Sanger's clinic was confiscated by the U.S. Customs in 1933. However, the court later ruled that physicians are able to prescribe contraceptives for medical reasons. This ruling marked a moment of progress in reproductive rights by recognizing the medical necessity of contraceptives and changing the rules around birth control. To delve deeper into the importance of birth control, we had the pleasure to talk with a human anatomy and physiology teacher.
Hello everyone, my name is Kristen Aure. I am a student here at South San Francisco High School, and I am here today with a human anatomy physiology teacher.
Hey, I'm Mr. Skold.
So the first question is, how does birth control affect a woman's reproductive system, and how does it prevent a woman from creating offspring?
I think this is a very interesting topic, particularly with history. I can mostly only speak to anatomy and physiology, but just talking about birth control and how it affects women, there's several different types of birth control. If we're talking about just things like condoms, then it's just a preventative system to prevent the sperm from entering the woman. If we're talking about things more like hormonal birth controls, we have things like pills, injections, patches. We even have long-term IUDs. Those basically work by suppressing certain hormones, such as like the follicle stimulating hormone or the luteinizing hormone, and just prevent the egg from releasing. No egg, no fertilization.
For the second question, in what ways did the creation of birth control revolutionize women's medical history?
Well, I think if we're talking about revolutionizing medical history, I think birth control really gives choice to women. In a successful relationship, both men and women are working together in order to kind of have that choice to have a baby, basically. So by having many different options for birth control, everyone can kind of find something that works right for them.
Wow, thank you so much.
Additionally, it allowed for the distribution of birth control information to the mail and the transportation of contraceptives across state lines if doctors handled it. This not only transformed societal attitudes towards the importance of reproductive autonomy, but also laid the groundwork for future advancements. To fully understand why Margaret Sanger was such a crucial figure involving women's rights dates back to when she challenged and diminished the Comstock Act. Sanger challenged the Comstock Act by providing her clients with health and reproductive information. However, they avoided creating written records or distributing informational pamphlets in order to prevent trouble caused by the Comstock Act. This was important for the progress for women's rights, as it pushed for the right to health education. Sanger's advocacy eventually marked a turning point for women's rights, as shown by the 1965 Supreme Court case of Griswold v. Connecticut. By challenging the Comstock Act, the case furthered Sanger's goal of providing women with birth control. The court overturned a Connecticut law that banned married couples from using contraceptives. This was a significant step forward for establishing right for reproductive matters because the recognition of autonomy and privacy further weakened the Comstock Act, making it more accessible to birth control options.
Anthony Comstock some years ago, and no one had stood up against it. No one had tried to change the laws. And at that time, not even a doctor had a right to use the United States mails and common carriers for books, for learning, for anything that he had to do with this question. It was considered obscene.
Her lifelong efforts of her first clinic paved the way for the establishment of Planned Parenthood. Sanger's persistent advocacy led to the establishment of the American Birth Control League in 1921 and the Birth Control Federation of America in 1939. These organizations eventually merged to become Planned Parenthood in 1942. Planned Parenthood has provided important services and supported women's rights, even continuing to do so to this day. Building on the foundation established by Sanger, Planned Parenthood continued to lead advancements in reproductive health. In the 1950s, under Sanger's leadership, Planned Parenthood and Sanger's friend, Catherine Dexter McCormick, provided financial support for research on birth control pills. This demonstrates Sanger and Planned Parenthood's dedication towards progress and that women have access to safe and effective birth control. Her efforts were significant in transforming reproductive health by empowering women to gain greater control over their reproductive choices in life. In 1970, the Title X law was enacted, providing government funding for family planning and sex education in the U.S. This enabled Planned Parenthood to extend birth control and sex education services to a larger population, particularly those in low-income areas. This shows the critical role of government in supporting and ensuring that all women have access to essential reproductive health services. Margaret Sanger's establishment of the first birth control clinic in 1916 marked a significant advance in women's reproductive rights. It upheld the need for medical prescriptions and recognized the necessary role of autonomy in reproductive health through the 1936 court ruling. Additionally, the Griswold v. the Connecticut case established that it is a constitutional right to use contraceptives privately, further challenging the Comstock Act. On top of that, the clinic eventually led to the establishment of Planned Parenthood that ensures health education for all. all. Ultimately, Margaret Sanger's legacy demonstrates the right to reproductive autonomy, birth control, and healthcare, and the government shows the responsibility they need to fill in to protect these rights. To this day, Sanger's work serves as the continuous effort required to ensure these freedoms for all.